Within the German borders, every Herero, with or without gun, with or without cattle, will be shot. On October 2, 1904, Lothar von Trotha, the military commander of German Southwest Africa, ordered the colonial troops to push the Herero inhabitants, including women and children, to the Omaheke Desert in eastern Namibia. The order was sent after the Germans crushed the Herero clans militarily. As a result, many Herero died in the warfare, and still more died of exhaustion in the desert. Another indigenous group, the Nama, suffered a similar fate. The survivors were sent to concentration camps to perform heavy labor. The Herero and Nama Genocide took place between 1904 and 1908 in today's Namibia. It is also recognized as the first genocide in the 20th century. Before the German colonization of Namibia in 1884, the country consisted of 4 major ethnic groups. The Herero were originally a group of cattle herders who migrated into the Namibian territory in the mid-18th century. They slowly drove other indigenous groups to the peripheral parts of Namibia. Similarly, the Nama people also relied on pastoral farming and settled primarily in the southern part of the country. The two groups came into conflict in the second half of the 19th century as both wanted to expand their pastures. The Herero, under the leadership of Samuel Maharero, came victorious from the conflict and established themselves as the dominant force by the 1880s. In 1884, Namibia formally became a German colony. Although there had been conflicts between the local inhabitants and the colonial authorities since then, the German community, which consisted of about 2,000 people, was still small compared to the indigenous population. However, 2 factors enabled the colonial power to expand. One was the discovery of diamonds in 1894, and the other was the virulent malaria in 1897, in which 90% of the cattle and more than 10,000 people died. Thus, the Nama and Herero were forced to sell their lands to the German companies and became increasingly marginalized as more white settlers came in. The Herero rebelled in January 1904 when more and more lands were confiscated by the German settlers. The uprising did not turn into a full-scale war at the beginning, and negotiation was still possible. But in August 1904, the Supreme Commander von Trotha abandoned the negotiation and ordered the colonial forces to encircle Waterberg, where most Herero families gathered. The troops were ordered not to take prisoners. They massacred 3,000 to 5,000 combatants and pushed the survivors into a desert, where most of them died of hunger and thirst. After the defeat of the Hereros, the Germans also waged wars against the Nama people for 3 years, burning their villages and fields. Around 10,000 Nama people were killed. The survivors, both Herero and Nama, were sent to concentration camps in Shark Island and Swakopmund along the Atlantic coast. Nowadays, these are holiday destinations, but over 100 years ago, thousands of Nama and Herero people were forced to work here in infrastructures and railway constructions. More than 7,000 people died of malnutrition and exhaustion, and the mortality rate was estimated to be around 45 to 75%. As we reflect on this event, a question that might pop up is, how did German colonialism lead to this genocide? If we look at terms like Lebensraum and social Darwinism, it can be argued that the colonial project contained genocidal tendencies from the very beginning. The concept of Lebensraum, which can be translated as living space in English, was first proposed by the German geographer Friedrich Ratzel in 1901. Originally used to explain the Darwinian theory of natural selection, it was later politicized to emphasize the necessity of gaining overseas colonies for the German people. The underlying theory for Lebensraum was social Darwinism. Applying what Darwin called the struggle for existence to human history, the German biologist Ernst Haeckel stated that competition among races was necessary. Furthermore, in The History of Creation, Haeckel wrote that the Caucasian was the highest race while the Negroes were savages. These ideologies played an important role in shaping the German colonial policy. The so-called struggle for existence was taken as a justification for exterminating the indigenous people so that the colonists' rule would be secured. These ideologies foreshadowed the ruthless killing of Nama and Herero, as well as other phenomena at the concentration camps. Prisoners were injected with opium and arsenic. Captured Herero and Nama women were forced to boil the dead bodies of their inmates. Skulls were then collected and sent to Germany for pseudoscientific research on racism. Some historians argue that the Nama and Herero genocide was a forerunner of the Holocaust, and yet this genocide is often forgotten by the public. There is a lack of awareness on how genocide is as a phenomenon. Regardless of the where and when, every genocide has the purpose of exterminating an entire group of people defined as unworthy of life, while there is nothing that marks them as essentially different from others. Therefore, we should all remember this genocide as well as many others, not only because of the sheer number of loss, but the atrocities committed against these people also remind us of how fragile humanity is and how easily it can be led to commit crime and cause disunity. The crime of dehumanization can tell us what it means to be a human being and the efforts we could make towards a better future.